video. So welcome to the SCube TV. Today we have a special guest, Samuel William Jr. with us. He's been in the military for quite a long time and he's now running for the Congress. So we'd like to hear more about him and his run directly from him. Welcome to the show, Samuel William.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate every opportunity to get a chance to talk to people, because that's the only way we're going to get the message out is to talk to people and let people talk to me so they can see where I'm coming from, and so I can take their message and what the people of the United States want to Washington.
Perfect. So, can you help us out in understanding a little bit more about what your career has been and what you've been doing? So, and that will be helpful for us to understand it more.
Well, I retired here in El Paso, Texas in 2013. I took my last duty station was at Fort Bliss, Texas, which is, just around the corner here. And, it was pretty nice to start with. And then we started digging into the political culture here and why our tax rates were going up and everything else. And the amount of, what you started seeing, you started putting the web of corruption together. And now, I ran in 2018 as a write-in to really get an education in being able to run for public office, because it's not something that you want to just, if you think you're going to go out there and just run the first time and win, especially as a write-in, you got a better chance of winning the lottery, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But, with the 2020 race, I went back to the Republican Party where I should have been in the first place. Also, with the two-party system, you're not going to win an election unless you belong to or have the support of one of the two mainstream parties.
I agree.
Across the country.
Yeah, that's what we have been seeing. I've been talking to a few other people, to libertarians and the Green Party, one candidate from the Green Party.
Right.
And it's a tough battle for them. And even some of the districts, within the two, the blue and the red, parties, Democratic and the Republican parties, there are few constituents which are strongly Republican, strongly Democratic. So it will be tough for the other parties to win the race in those districts. So coming back to your district, can you talk a little bit about your defense or military background a little bit? That's fine. Yeah.
Right. I was in the United States Army for 29 years, 8 months, 16 days. That's on your discharge certificate, so you're going to know exactly how long you stayed. But, I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, especially over the last, 2 decades.
Yes.
And, seeing the world from a different view like that, you start learning that there's a lot of things here in America that are really great. And that if we don't step up and protect them now, we're going to lose it. And I really think that's where we're at here, especially in the state of Texas. The Democratic Party really wants to flip Texas to a blue state. And once that happens, I don't think that any that's going to destroy the conservative values across the country. Because Texas we're supposed to pick up 2 or 3 more House seats, with the after the census by the population numbers. And if the Democrats were to gain a majority in Texas, that would shift everything to try to turn Texas into like a California, you might say. And we can't allow that to happen. We need conservative values to come back, because the morality of the country has gone down because those conservative values have been stepped on for the last 30 to 40 years.
Gotcha. That's a good point. Thanks for sharing your views. And coming back to the El Paso, so what is it? El Paso, can you tell a little bit about the topics or the hot points in the El Paso area? I know it's a border state and we hear about El Paso once in a while.
We do have the border issues, and you're right. There is a physical barrier here in El Paso. It's not complete, of course. Initially, I said, as a write-in, I was saying, we don't need a border wall in the city limits of El Paso. And the reason I said that was because we already had a fence, but I didn't realize that there was about a probably about a mile that was near a rail yard that actually had just chain link fence. That needs to be fixed too. We need to make it so that when people want to come into the country, they need to come through a legal port of entry. This is America. It's our country. We have the right to determine who comes and who we let into this country. And when people come through like the desert here on the southern border, especially, there's a lot of space out there that there is no actual physical barrier, and that needs to be addressed. And I think the president right now is doing a pretty good job of addressing that issue, but there's a lot of pushback on his part, he's getting for constructing that barrier, because you can't put 2,000 miles or 2,100 miles of border. There's not enough people to cover that entire thing. So with a physical barrier, at least it keeps your manpower issue down. In 2008, 2009, I actually ran the green zone in Baghdad, Iraq, as for security, as the force protection NCOIC. We had 26 miles of wall there, and walls don't stop everything, but they are a definite deterrent, and they give you time to react if something does happen. But if you're going to claim asylum in any country, I believe that you should do that at a legal port of entry, not like the United States and the 8 CFR right now. You can claim asylum after being here illegally for up to 1 year. But how do you prove that being a credible reason to claim asylum other than you think you're going to get released from detention sooner? Because I think that's what really happens.
Gotcha.
My Democrat opponent, after this runoff, of course, I'm pretty confident in the runoff. I don't want to get overconfident because that's how you lose. But going forward, after this runoff we're having right now, the Democrat that's here has done absolutely nothing for the United States. She's continually advocates for, the open border type society where people can just come in and out, and because they're in America or they crossed the border illegally, now they're our responsibility as American citizens. And I don't really agree with that, because most places you can go in this world, if you cross into their country illegally, you're going to either wind up in jail or dead. I mean, it's really the way it really works everywhere else in the world. So why is America rules that everybody else follows?
Yeah, that's a valid point in the views from your side. So, coming back to the El Paso city or the area, you mentioned on your website, El Paso is paying highest taxes in the country. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
I know there's been some changes, recently in some other places. But one of the reasons that the tax rates, the property taxes are so high is actually it's a school tax. We have 9 independent school districts within one county, right? And El Paso County is really not that large of a county in the grand scheme of Texas. But by doing so, what that does is each one of those school districts is a taxing entity that can raise taxes, pretty much when they feel like it. And what I did see is we spend $1.5 billion a year on education in El Paso County through these 9 school districts. We only have 157,000 students. It's not like we have a lot of kids in school. But I did a comparison between the Miami-Dade district, which is one of the largest districts in the country. They spend $1.2 billion a year. They have 347,000 students. We hear an excuse here that we're a bilingual community because of the Spanish, English thing. But to me, that's just an excuse, because I looked at Miami-Dade. They actually have 4 languages that they're dealing with. They deal with the Creole from Haiti. They deal with English, and then 2 versions of Spanish, the Puerto Rican Spanish and the Cuban Spanish, which are different. You're going to understand somebody, but there's still those barriers that you have to cross. But what I did see is that the kids out of the Miami-Dade district were actually outscoring the kids here in El Paso on the ACT and SAT scores by 20%. So it's definitely not a language. It's not a language issue. I think it's an overmanagement issue that all these independent school districts are top heavy. They're paying superintendents, $300,000-$400,000 a year, and what are we getting for? What's our return on investment? There actually hasn't been any if our kids aren't getting the education that we're paying for.
Gotcha. That's a good, point to discuss in the selections, and also in general, because people say education is the main key thing for people to come out of the poverty, or even go to the next level of the life, or next stage. Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, I grew up actually very poor in South Florida. Right, in a county, very, very small population, a town of about 6,000 people. I mean, I learned a lot of, skills that I probably wouldn't have had I not lived in that kind of community. But I still see the same people I was in school with still living there that live, pretty poorly. And part of that, what I see from that town is being here in El Paso. And El Paso is a city of about 750,000 people, right? And it's being run, this entire area is being run like it's a town of 6,000 or 7,000 people. You have that, the same families have been running this area, for over a century. And that does create a big problem because they don't want to allow progress to come in here. We had, I don't know if you guys saw it a few weeks ago, Elon Musk, well, it's been over a month ago now, but Elon Musk was talking about taking Tesla out of California.
Yes.
Well, had I, been in office and had the resources to reach out to them, I would have reached out to him the day he said it to try and get Tesla to come here, because the jobs that it would have created for this area would be, bigger jobs than they've ever had before. I mean, we have 10% of our population here in El Paso that live on less than $10,000 a year. That's not very.
That's very low. How is it? Why is it so? You also mentioned the poverty is another topic.
Well, a lot of it has to do with we have more service industry here and very little heavy industry and manufacturing. When you're working in restaurants and hotels, those are minimum salary jobs or retail jobs or minimum wage jobs. And we have one of the biggest things and they keep touting it as these call centers. The thing is, they only pay $10 or $11 an hour maximum. So people are suffering, that, and it keeps and they're keeping the wages down because we have a lot of people that come across the border every day to work here in El Paso. Some of them are legal to work in the United States, some of them are not. And, in the construction industry, especially, we have a larger problem with the illegal worker being hired by the construction. So it keeps the wages down. They're not going to allow those wages to climb. And that's why a lot of businesses here don't.
Hello, are you there? Sorry, yes.
Right thing.
Yeah, got you. Yeah, the poverty. So what is that, government trying to do to improve the lives of these people who are under poverty?
Well, right now, they're not doing anything. They haven't. With the COVID thing, that definitely created a whole new issue for everybody. But I think that just giving people money and sending checks through the mail and handing money out to people doesn't bring them out of poverty. It makes them more of a dependent on the government, and that's what we see today. A lot of people were worried about these stimulus checks. They weren't worried about catching the virus, because the day those stimulus checks came in, the Walmarts, the Target, Home Depot, Lowe's were busier than they'd ever been before. And they shut down all the small businesses, during the COVID crisis. And we're looking at probably about 10% of the small businesses right here in El Paso that won't come back or won't reopen because of it. How many jobs are lost with that? And that's going to drive the poverty level up again, even more, unless we bring in, a large manufacturer that can hire it. Because I don't think people understand that if you brought a company like Tesla in, all of the ancillary businesses that would come into it, that would spring up after they built their main plant, that would create just as many good paying jobs. We have the University of Texas here, but most of the students leave this area because the job market is so poor.
They come there to study, and then once they're done,
they take off. They're not going to stay here. Even the local kids that go wind up moving out of El Paso. With as large a base as Fort Bliss is here, we're only retaining 13% of the soldiers that get out here are staying in El Paso. And most of it has to do because they don't have a job. The biggest employer in this area is the federal government.
Yeah, I see that one. I mean, these are a couple of federal, defense facilities and chemical. Yeah, there's another topic which we'll come to. I mean, you brought in the COVID-19, issue, which you said, which may drive the numbers, the poverty numbers up. So, how is the overall COVID-19 situation in the Texas area? I know yesterday it was the highest number of cases. In
a day they had their highest number of cases a day, but I think that's directly related also to the increase in testing too. The more tests, the more we're going to see. But I think on a percentage basis, if you look, the positive tests have been roughly the same across the board based on the number of tests conducted.
Okay.
But we've also seen where they take, and I do know this has happened. If you schedule for a test and you don't show up, they still count that as a test being done. So I don't think, across the country, we're getting accurate information on COVID in the first place. But I also don't think it's nearly as bad as what the mainstream media has done. You start reading all the data on it, certain blood types are more immune, have a higher immunity than others to get it. I think type O, if you have type O blood, you're pretty much out of the running for catching COVID. According,
there's multiple, yes.
But I honestly don't think it's any worse than any other virus that's out there. It's like people are saying, oh, we can't open the country up, we can't open businesses up till we find a vaccine. Well, AIDS was first identified, in the early 1980s, and we still don't have a vaccine for it. So these viruses, there may or may not ever be a vaccine for them. And you can't just shut down life and have everybody hide in their homes. How is that going to, how are they going to survive,
Yes, I hear the point. That's your views are taken. And if you look at the history, in the data for last few months, the number of cases are more, and number of deaths are also more, where the poverty is more.
That's true. And that's because of cultural issues where families are living closer together. The numbers actually show that it's more than likely it'll be a whole family that's infected, because of living in that type. And having, here in El Paso being a Hispanic community, we're 83 to 84% Hispanic. They have a very family orientated culture. So naturally, those numbers are going to go up.
Okay, that's the numbers are.
I can understand why you would see it in some areas higher than others. Because of the family values that are there.
Family values, and they could stay close.
Yeah, they're closer families, so they're more likely to spread it among their family members.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'll leave the topic right there, and we can go to something else.
Yeah, we can do something else.
Yeah, sure, certainly. Okay. And see, it's just I don't know whether you know. I live in Detroit, suburbs of Detroit.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. That gets too cold for me there.
I know. We got used to it now, so it's like 20 years. I know.
Yeah,
when out of the winter.
Aren't you from a warm? You're from a warm climate, though. If I understand your accent, it's pretty warm in India, correct?
I'm originally from India. I moved in to Florida, to be honest with you, in 96 or so. And so Florida, to the West, as a Virginia, and then to the Michigan right now.
It's been skipping everywhere. But Detroit was the first place I saw.
Michigan for 20 years. Sorry. Yeah.
But first place I ever saw gray snow was Detroit.
Yes, it snows heavily in Detroit, no doubt about it. The reason I brought in Detroit topic for you is, see, our mayor in Detroit, I don't know whether you know about the Detroit or not. He's Mike Dugan. I mean, he is the white gentleman, and I mean, the majority of the Detroit is the population. I mean, earlier previous mayors are all, I mean, African American, run by the African Americans.
Right.
So it was a, I mean, good change. I mean, the politics. I mean, even within the Democrat. I mean, but I mean, even the demographics are different demographics. I mean, the other candidate was able to win. So, what do you think of when you said in El Paso, you have 83% of the Hispanics, and I mean, and it's been, I mean, Democratic for 55 years. That's what you mentioned offline, and
Right.
so what are the chances for a Republican in El Paso in coming elections?
Well, I think they're actually a lot better than they have been over the last 55 years, because Texas up until 2018 was straight party voting too, and I think that's another issue where people just go in and they get complacent about how they vote because the ballots can be so long. They go in, they push one party button, and they walk out. They voted for everybody on the ballot instead of voting for an individual. With the straight party voting going away, I think we have a lot better chance, to actually change the direction of El Paso. And what you mentioned Detroit, because you say there, if you look, Detroit and El Paso are roughly the same size ranked. I think one is 18, one is 19 for our, on the scale of the size of cities that we are. And I think we have a lot of the same issues. We see a lot of the same problems. The disparity in the what people would classify as a minority population. I don't see that so much here. There is a section of El Paso that is poor. Every city has that, but they also don't get the support from the city that they should get in that area. The districts are very gerrymandered here to, based on money more so than party or anything like that.
Okay. That's interesting to know about the gerrymandering. I mean, based on the money and those kind of things.
Yeah, it is. We have District 8, the City Council District 8 has the richest and the poorest people in El Paso in the same district. How is that even going to be fair? Because we know the city's not going to spend the money in that district, in the side of that district that actually needs work and needs help. They're going to spend it on the side where their big donors are.
That's another challenge. I mean, whenever you have different groups of people in the same city, so we don't know. I mean, for somebody it is a need, and for somebody it is not. They don't look at it as a need, and so the politicians has to make a tough decision, and which one has to be supported and which one has to be deferred, those kind of things. I mean, that's a big challenge. So, I mean, coming back to your website, and you also mentioned about the education system, no child left behind, and those kind of things. I mean, it's not working. So we would like to more about that, your views on that.
Well, I definitely disagree with the no child left behind because, the child's not being educated at that point. You're just moving them through the system. They're participating, but they're not learning. And we need to go back to where if your child's not learning, they need to repeat a grade. They need to repeat a grade so that they have that they're better off in society once they get out of school. My wife is Korean, so our education to us is very big. She's pretty hard. It was hard on our kids, with their education as well. And I think a lot of it goes back to the parents don't take responsibility for the education of their children. That's another part of the issue that we have. People are pushing their responsibility off onto the school system when they have an obligation at home to also educate their children. It's not the school's job to do everything or the teacher's job to do everything. If you're not involved in your child's education, then your child's going to be complicit with his education.
I agree with you on the personal level involvement in the education, which is. But I mean, what is it wrong with the education system which is not helping? The usually mostly the public schools are as a gift to the citizens. I mean, which will help the citizens to, I mean, break the chain of the poverty, and they can study and they can get a good higher education and get a good job, good paying jobs, and then break the chain of being falling under the poverty line.
Right.
So what is that? I mean, I think the US is the one of the countries which is spending most money, maximum money on the education system, and
But it's
still
fair.
people complaining and it is not great. Yeah.
Well, I also think that the having the federal standard in education, having even the Department of Education dictating to different areas on what curriculum should be, has created some of the problem. And I think our education system here in the United States has moved more from education to indoctrination. You know, it's more about creating. I mean, you listen to some of the teachers. You know, they're teaching the kids to be a victim. I did there was a Black Lives Matter something at University of Texas, and we did, of course, it was a Zoom meeting, and they let us in for a little while. But everything that I heard from this professor he was African. I think he's the director of African American Studies at the University of Texas, El Paso. Claiming victim status, and I was like, wait a minute, you get paid over $100,000 a year, right? Yet you're teaching our children to become a victim based on their skin color, and that's far from the problem here in this country. You know, I honestly believe that if you live in the United States of America and you set your mind to it, you can do anything and be anything you want.
That's
You know,
true.
our personal choices as individuals, they dictate what our destiny will be. You know, even if you're a Christian, you know, you put this stuff into God's hands. But the thing is, you know, it's like they say, you know, God won't, you have to help yourself for God to be able to help you. You know, he can put everything in front of you, but if you don't take it and use it, then it doesn't matter. And that's part of the issue too. People get opportunities and they blow them. They don't take that opportunity.
Yeah, you said it right. I mean, the opportunities are there. I mean, you should look for them and then help yourself and grabbing them and then working with them. That's a good point, message. And coming back to another your campaign points, you're talking about the religious freedom too. So which you just brought in the religious.
Right.
So what is that?
You think about that. The United States was founded, you know, if you go back all the way to the Mayflower Compact, you know, the United States the people that came to the United States were looking for religious freedom. And some of them were actually looking to be free from religion as well. You know, you should not be persecuted for practicing your faith at all. And that's what I think it comes down to. Regardless of, we each have different values on how, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, we all have a set of, you know, we're usually raised in some type of, you know, around some type of religion that dictates values to you. And if your family believes in those particular values, then that's what, you shouldn't have somebody telling you, oh no, that's wrong. You should believe what you need to believe. Even though I'm a Christian, I still believe that people need to be able to practice their religion freely. But you should not be able to push your religion onto somebody else. And I think that's where people get confused on the First Amendment, is that it gives you the freedom from religion, not the freedom of religion. So that means on the street, outside, when we go outside and somebody starts talking to you about a specific sect or religion or doctrine, whatever, if you don't want to hear it and you tell them, no, I don't want to hear that, they should move on. You shouldn't push your religious ideas onto someone else.
Gotcha. Okay, then thank you very much for the reviews on that particular topic. But today, another topic is, I mean, the pandemic. I mean, we just touched it a little bit, but at the same time, during this time, we got another hot topic: Black Lives Matter. I mean, all lives matter. Those kind of things are coming up. So, how is it in El Paso area? And what
Well,
are you?
we've had some demonstrations here. Nothing that has gotten out of control, and I think that goes back to the people of El Paso actually not participating in violence. You know, they understand that you can't destroy your city to make your point. That doesn't, to me, that doesn't resonate. That just tells me that destroy other people's lives and not really care about what people actually think. Their way of thinking is the only right way of thinking. And that's not true. We all have different ways of thinking. We're each individuals. We all think something different. And I believe there's common ground across the board for everybody. And I think with the George Floyd thing, I think this has been planned for a while. It was just they needed a trigger to be able to set their plan into motion. And George Floyd happened to be that trigger. Now, what happened with him, with the police, was it's definitely wrong. It should never have been handled that way, because once that person was restrained, there's no more threat.
Yeah.
He should have been put into the car and they did what they had to do, but not put the guy on the ground for 10, cutting the blood flow off to the brain.
That's a wrong. I mean, a very unfortunate situation, and but at the same time, I mean, during this moment, another thing has come up. Like, I mean, in the anger against the police, they've been talking about defunding the police, and
Right.
they want talking about the qualified immunity. These kind of topics are
Right.
coming up.
And the thing is, with the way I see it with defunding the police and stuff, we have enough crime going on already that people, it doesn't get handled by the police. It's because it's such a small thing. They don't have time for that. They're always working on something bigger for community protection. The thing is, if you don't have police that are trained, you're going to have vigilante justice going on. And I don't think people understand that completely. Police, there is a fine line of, what they're going to do for their safety, to defend themselves too. We saw that in Georgia. Was it last week before?
Yeah.
Where the guys took the police's taser and then tased the cop with it. Okay, so the other cop now wound up shooting the guy in a defensive situation. Yet they're being both of those police officers were fired and are now looking at being prosecuted for doing their job. Because this was, it wasn't just a 2-minute ordeal. They had talked to this guy for like 45 minutes. And as soon as they, once they did the sobriety test and whatever, they went to do their job and he became combative at that point. I think a lot of people need to have respect for police, because that's a job. You're putting yourself out there every day. You're putting your life on the line to protect people you don't even know. It's just like being a soldier. You go to defend your country, you're putting your life on the line and in the hands of the people that are around you. And you have guidelines that you have to follow. And when it's a dangerous situation, it happens. Your mindset moves very fast. Your decision-making process, especially if you're under threat. And I think that most people in America forget that they've lived under a security blanket that a lot of countries don't have. If you've lived somewhere else in the world, I think your eyes are more open to that. Living here in the United States, you are very protected. And you're sheltered from a lot of the stuff that happens in this world. You don't see it firsthand. Most of our soldiers, anymore, get somewhat of a chance to see how nasty the world can be. And unfortunately, it's not the nice utopia that everybody would think it is.
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing the views in that direction. So your current, Congresswoman, the Veronica Escobar. So what? Yes, sorry. What is it? She missing. So which you want to cover them?
Well, she advocates more for non-U.S. citizens and people that are on the other side of the border in Mexico or Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, all of those places. Just because they want to come here doesn't mean that they can claim asylum, yet she's pushing that. And one of the issues that a lot of people don't realize is her husband is actually a federal immigration judge right here in the El Paso sector, which I think is another one of the problems that we have, is because she has direct influence over a federal immigration court. She could actually influence that court on a decision very easily. To me, that's nepotism at best. She's a member of Congress and he's a member of the executive, he's an executive judge here. Yet everything that she's done legislation-wise that she's sponsored herself does absolutely nothing for anyone in the United States. And she's actually trying to restrict what CBP and ICE can actually do and how they can handle a situation. The rules out there are like one Border Patrol agent can only supervise 3 children, that they apprehend. Well, what they try to do is, that's why we have mass crossings, is they try to tie up a sector or all the officers in one spot so that the contraband, the main effort, can happen somewhere else unabated. And she doesn't want to admit that. She thinks that the wall is the worst thing in the world that we could do. And that the money for the wall, right, they keep telling everybody it's coming out of the defense budget. What they fail to tell you is that it actually comes out of the Corps engineer budget. And they tell you half the story, because if it's coming out of the Corps engineers, there's a good chance that that money would have been spent outside of the United States on an infrastructure project somewhere else in the world. I did some contracting in Iraq, and we had Corps of Engineer projects, and some of the money that the Corps engineers was dumping into this was huge, but it didn't come out of the warfighting budget. It came out of the Corps engineers budget. So I think that but they're not being transparent with anything. They don't want to give you the whole story. And then when you start digging into it, you start finding the entire story out, yet they'll deny it right up until the end, And what we've seen with her policies is they are nothing but to take care of that illegal immigrant that's coming across the border and take yours and my tax dollars to pay for it. Where is that our responsibility? You immigrated to the United States. My wife immigrated to the United States. And the process is not easy. My son-in-law just came here from the UK. And it took, over a year to get everything processed. There are things, if you just follow the steps, it's fine. But if you're not going to follow the steps, why do we have an obligation for you to come in and demand us to take care of you? I haven't seen that happen anywhere else in the world.
Thanks for the views on that particular topic. And also your views on how Veronica Escobar is handling it. So what is the different things which you will be able to bring to the table if you are elected?
Well, we can we'll start with the DACA program. I think there's an easy fix for that. I think that a lot of times issues aren't solved because each one of these parties needs a platform, needs something to rally their people around. If you fix something, then you don't have that to use next time for your next campaign. But DACA in general is easy to fix. Everybody knows that it was an executive order and it was unconstitutional if by what the Constitution says. But being that we as a country our president offered this to these people because they're adults now. They're not children anymore. We have an obligation to fix that program and fix it, even though I recommend is to, instead of them having to renew this visa every 2 years, why don't we just, when it comes to renewal time now, we issue them a resident alien green card and be done with it and fix the process, because they didn't tell these people that they were going to have to reapply every 2 years and it was going to cost them about $500 every 2 years to maintain a semi-legal status. It's not even a full status. They're allowed to work, they're allowed to pay taxes, but that's it. The 8 CFR right now does not allow for anyone to enter the United States illegally to become a U.S. citizen. That's something that has to be completely the law has to change, but we can fix it by allowing them resident alien status. And at that point, really, the only right you don't have is to vote. And the thing is, it should only apply to the people that would qualify under the original DACA plan. It doesn't apply to the family members, the chain migration stuff that needs to stop. Because there's a point where that, just because, you're becoming a resident doesn't mean that someone else that got here in your family illegally should become a resident if they don't qualify. And I know it's they're going to pull on people's heartstrings, but logic tells you that everybody needs to follow the same process. And we have to quit making exceptions for certain groups of people. Because that's what creates the strife here in this country, is because one group of people has a separate set of rights than another group of people. The Constitution is supposed to be the rights we have, so everybody has the same rights. No one group needs to have a set of rights that outweigh someone else's rights. Because you hear that a lot with people right now too, with carrying firearms and things like that. I'm a gun lover. Okay, that's me. But I also understand the fact that going into like a Walmart or something carrying, and if they ask you to cover it up, you should cover it up. I think it's common courtesy. And I think that's something we lack, that a lot of people in the United States now lack. Because you have the right, but where your rights end, or where my rights start, or where your rights end? You can't infringe on somebody else's right. And I think that we have a lot of problem with that right now. And that just goes back to people being courteous to each other. It's like with the 14th Amendment is another issue with birthright citizenship. We have people that come here 9 months pregnant. We have women that come to the United States 9 months pregnant just to have the child so that they can get onto our welfare system, you might say, and stay in the United States. That has to stop as well, because that wasn't the intent of the 14th Amendment.
Gotcha. That's it. Thanks for sharing your views on these topics. So you brought in another point. Gun control, our Second Amendment, which is, many people like and love, and they would like to use it. But at the same time, we see a lot of deaths. And also the incidents where people have killed multiple people. So how do we balance the right and the responsibility?
Well, and you said it right there. There is a responsibility for having liberty and freedom to defend yourself. You have a personal responsibility to be a responsible gun owner. I think that education goes a long way with that, starting with kids, because once you take the mystique out of it, and I've seen this with my own grandkids and my own children, once you take that taboo away from the firearm, it doesn't become something they got to get their hands on anymore. It becomes something that, hey, I would like to go to the ring. My grandson will say, hey, I want to go out shooting. Okay, he'll come ask. So they know that you've shown them what this thing can do and what the finality could be of using a firearm. I think is paramount to making people understand. I don't think it's a video game issue. I think it's more of a society issue, because you can use a knife, a shovel, a hammer just as much as a weapon as a firearm. It's a tool. It doesn't work unless someone's actually holding it, and operating just like any other tool. So there's, I think it's a morality thing as well, because people get away with so much anymore without any kind of consequence. And I think that's what's pushed, you see where the violence has increased, because people don't have that moral sense or that value for human life anymore. Being a soldier and fighting in the Middle East, I understand what it is, that if you have to take a life, that's not something that you take lightly to do, and you're going to live with it for the rest of your life if you have to do that. Because it goes back to with the abortion issue as well. I mean, you think about how many children are killed every year based on that, and it's all done, and most of the abortions are in African American communities. You could go back and look at the lady that started it, Margaret Sanger. She actually talked to Adolf Hitler, and then Eleanor Roosevelt said that the German system was so great, but yet it wasn't, and they were trying to control certain populations and certain individuals, thinking that one human being is lesser than another. We're all equal across the board. It doesn't matter where you come from or what you do. We had a problem with our soldiers, especially in the Middle East, saying, oh, these people are stupid or whatever because they don't speak English. That was their problem. That has nothing to do with it. We had to use the analogy that these guys take stuff from out from under their sink and blow you up every day so that people can understand what's going on. But I don't think it's really the gun is the problem. The United States has been pretty free with firearms forever. But I think some of the restrictions have gotten too high as well. People talk about suppressors, they call them silencers. Well, if you've ever used one, you know that it doesn't really, it reduces it a little bit, but nothing like the movie thing. And it's just like with mass shootings, what is the classification of a mass shooting? Because the definition changes, that goalpost changes quite frequently. And, still, even there are people that are armed that are in these places where these mass shootings happen, and because they lack training, they can't do anything to stop it. Because now they're just as scared. I mean, you see all of this. So I really don't think that there's a gun violence problem. I think it's a society problem more so than anything else.
Okay, is it anything to do with the behavioral health and our healthcare and those kind of things?
Somewhat. I think that there is, but I think we're pushing mental health as a discipline problem as well. Because there's a lot of discipline issues out there. We saw it in the military. The standards dropped so much that the discipline level dropped at the same time, just from simple things like when we changed uniforms to where the soldiers didn't have to shine their boots. Kind of a lot of people lack discipline here in the United States. I honestly agree with that. Because they don't know, like I said before, they don't realize what it's like in the rest of the world, And here we have so much more of everything than we actually need.
We take few things for granted.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
And I believe that a lot of people in the United States need to travel outside to understand that and see. I mean, even in, like in the Middle East, you look at Afghanistan or Iraq, if you don't own a gun, you're not a man, Yet their levels of gun violence are, actually at times less than they are here.
Gotcha. Good. I mean,
I think they have a better courtesy toward each other, is what it comes down to.
Thanks for covering. That you were sharing your views on this topic too. And we would like to talk about a little bit healthcare. As you're running for the Congress, and there's another healthcare is another big topic. I mean,
Yeah, it is. It's huge.
yeah, the cost of insurance and I mean medical bills or prescription drugs. So, what is your view or what is your take on that current healthcare, and then how are you
And
trying
I've
to?
talked to a lot of doctors too on that too. And the reason that the insurance companies and the big pharma are driving the cost of healthcare more so than anything else, driving it up. But when you go to your provider, if someone makes a coding error on that insurance claim, then that claim gets rejected. It goes back to the doctor. He's waiting 6 to 9 months on his money. He's still trying to run a business at the same time if he's not having that income. And that's why I think that the insurance rates and what you see charged on a medical bill, if it's under insurance or if you just go in and pay for it, if you go in and pay for it, it's substantially less if you're going to pay cash, because he's not having to wait on that money to pay his people, the nurses and the staff that work in that doctor's office. And it's the same thing. And most hospitals are in it for profit. It's not that they're there to actually help the people. They're there to make money. How does a single Tylenol tablet cost $7? I mean, it doesn't make sense that something like that be. Prescription drug prices here in the United States are just out of control. And we're paying, you can get the same thing. We can go to Juarez here and get the same exact prescription for a quarter of what it would cost here in the United States, or sometimes even a bigger thing, yet it's the same manufacturer, it's the same medicine. So why is it so much higher in here? And it's because the insurance billing and the big pharma do that to control, to keep the prices up, to keep their shareholders happy. That's what I really think is the biggest thing. And we need more competition between insurance companies as well. They need to be competing for our business, not us competing to get insurance. Because with the ACA, a lot of providers, a lot of insurance providers pulled out of a lot of markets. And then that actually increased premium rates. And then you look at what some of the deductibles are, it's just like not having insurance. Or you take someone like me that's retired military. At 65, if I don't take Medicare, I lose my military health insurance. Makes no sense to do that. I pay for the for the TRICARE, I pay it's very cheap. It's like $600 a year. And that covers my life. But I also have the Veterans Administration that take care of my medical as well. Yet at 65, I have to turn around and pay again $140 a month for Medicare. We've convoluted the system so much that there's so much administrative fees in it that it drives the price up as well. There's no reason for me as a retired service member to even have to go out and worry about having Medicare. That's one of the things that I think we need to change as well with our senior citizens, is that you pay into Medicare your entire working career. At 65, when you get your Social Security, they take $145 out of your Social Security to pay for Medicare. Yet the system originally was not designed to do that. It was designed for people that did not have private health care coverage through a company they worked for, so that they had some type of medical coverage at retirement. And I think we need to bring that system back to the way it was intended, not to what it is today, because that's also what has driven up pricing.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks for sharing that one. And another thing is, as the El Paso has a lot of environmental issues, like chemical contamination in the groundwater or earth. So what is the?
We have that problem so much here. We have actually El Paso has a lot of water. A lot of people don't realize there's two Bolsons here, which are underground lakes, one on either side of the mountain range. We have the largest inland desalinization plant in the world here in El Paso. There's plenty of water. It's just getting down to it. It's about 1,000 feet down to that Bolson. But once you're down there, then you have to worry about, because there are brackish pockets. The biggest problem we have with water quality here is probably that it's, extreme, has a lot of calcium in it. But the groundwater here is so deep that I don't think that we have very much contamination. It's just deep. If we were taking it out of the Rio Grande, that might change that. And that's still another issue in itself as well, because of the dams upriver from here. Our farmers are limited on how much water they can use for irrigation as well. So sometimes the Rio Grande doesn't have more than a trickle through it here, but yet north of here and south of here, it's full.
Gotcha. Okay. Then thanks for sharing your views on that. And do you want to say any message to your constituents or the audience?
We definitely need funding. That's one of the hardest things to do. Always as with a campaign, you need those donors, and I look at it different than a lot of people, I think, because I won't take the PAC money and things like that, because that's what's hurt our politics today, is that people are bought and paid for. I like people that give $5 or $10 are probably more. That's where to be, because you can't afford to just give somebody your money, because you still need to eat. You've got bills to pay as well. But if you can afford $10, you go to our Win Red, or to the website for that matter. It's samforep.com, and we have a link on there for WinRed and a link on there for PayPal. The thing with PayPal is that if somebody were to give $200 or more, now we have to get all this FEC compliance data that has to go. That's why I like the WinRed better, because I report even if somebody gives us $1, we actually report it, because I think that's where the transparency issue is in this country right now, because you'll see all this stuff on the Democrat side that just says Act Blue on it. And you'll see big donations at what the max is of $2,800 per election coming through Act Blue with no name on it. To me, that's not the right way to do it. And if somebody's giving you that kind of money, they're definitely, a lot of times they're going to be looking for a favor, especially if it's coming locally, that kind of money. If it's coming nationally, I don't think so. And as long as you live within the United States and are a resident of the United States, you can donate to any of the congressional campaigns out there. Because I know on the Republican side, we have a real hard time raising money as far as the down ballot goes. The president, of course, is killing it, but the rest of us, we need help, and we don't see money from the RNC either. I mean, I win this runoff, the most the party will give me here is $1,000. And that's at $5 a yard sign, average cost. It starts running up there. Radio, TV ads are expensive. I prefer doing things like we're doing today, because I think it's more personal, talking to people.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that way you get the message farther.
Yeah, it is a little hard running a campaign. I mean, you need a lot of money, especially the congressional, this thing. I mean, some people.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The average congressional seat, winners in 2018, they averaged $1.3 million to win that seat is what it costs. For a job that pays, it's still not bad pay. I mean, it's over, $174,000 a year. It pays well for the amount of time you work. But I also think we should change the way that we do them, because with a congressman into 2-year time frame, you get about 9 months of work out of them, and then they're back out there campaigning. So why not change it to a 4-year like the president, and let's get some work out of us. If you get elected, you're going to actually have to do your job for 3 years.
Your points are good to hear. I don't know how much it is practically possible.
No, probably not. But at least it's a thought. You can try. And that's with anything. If you don't try, you fail immediately. At least if you try and fail, you can try again and keep moving, at least trying to get it done. It's the same thing with term limits. They've been trying to pass that for years now. The problem is that the Senate, since the 17th Amendment, since 1913, we don't control the Senate anymore, as far as the state rights go. Where before the 17th Amendment, if you had a senator that was messing up, the governor could recall them, and replace them. Now, today, we can't do that. And I think that has another, is another impact, because that's one of our other issues, is repealing the 17th Amendment.
17th Amendment. Gotcha. Okay. No, thank you very much for coming onto the show and
Yes, sir.
sharing with you.
I appreciate your time.
And good luck with your run. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Have a nice day. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.